After spending about 2 weeks with Bungie's Marathon and closed alpha, I'm finally ready to share my thoughts on the game. I've had a bunch of highs, a bunch of lows, and I'm left with a mixed bag of emotions. But before we take all of this apart, I want to talk about the genre of Bungie's Marathon. Now, this is an extraction shooter. And the goal of an extraction shooter is very, very simple. You get in, you find as much loot as possible, and you try to get out alive with all of your loot intact. That sounds simple at first, but when you add limited inventory space, other enemies, including other players, you start to realize that this is a little more of a niche genre. Something specially reserved for people who really enjoy highly competitive, high-risk, high-reward environments. And while this genre is not at all new, it's new to Bungie, a company that typically makes games that are very mainstream. We're talking about going from the likes of Halo and Destiny, which do have hardcore players, but it's also open to casual players. And now we've got Bungie's Marathon, which is set in a genre that's almost exclusively reserved for hardcore gamers. So now it seems as though Bungie's taking on this challenge to make the hardcore genre of the extraction shooter a little more open to more players. And if anyone can pull it off, I think it's them. But I'm already getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about what it's like to actually play Marathon specifically. So as I stated earlier, the goal of Marathon is to land in an area, get as much loot as you can, and then get out with all of your loot intact. But in this game's specific case, you're choosing from one of the runners that are available to you. Each of these runners feature their own set of abilities that make them appealing or not in combat, depending on your playstyle. Personally, I was running with a character that had a lot of situational awareness. There was one move that they could use which would ping enemies in the area. But even in trying the other characters, I did feel a lot of similarity between them, and that goes back to that really crispy Bungie gameplay. Because at the end of the day, this still is a Bungie first-person shooter, and honestly, you just know it when you play it. So when you load into your area of choice, you're grouped up with 2 other players. This is your squad, and if you're lucky, they'll stay with you as you move from building to building and area to area searching for loot. One thing I found interesting about this is while we were looking for loot, everybody would split up and find different boxes and take different things. And this is because all of the loot in Marathon is shared between players. So if you find something, that's yours. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. I don't know why I said that, but honestly it fits. But since you're in a cooperative environment, sometimes it makes sense to share ammunition or healing items. So working with your squad is integral to making it through a run alive. And it becomes especially important to communicate with your squad. You don't even need to use voice chat because you can actually mark things on your map. So if you see an item that somebody else might need, it's important to ping that for them, or if you see an enemy off in the distance, then you should let your team know. And this specific part of playing Marathon stood out to me because it was a lot different from what I had already experienced in Halo and Destiny. And while this played nothing like those games, it also did feel inherently Bungie. It was this scouring and this exploring that really gave a lot of life to all the areas that I was in. The environmental design made it clear that these laboratories and buildings and vehicles that were abandoned clearly were important at one time. And here I am, who knows how many years later, picking apart the remains of these locations. So eventually, as you're moving through each area, you're gonna run into opposition, whether that's other players or enemy robots. And honestly, I don't know which one was more threatening, because in some situations, enemy players were extreme pushovers. We were able to just take them out one by one. There were also situations where enemy players simply descended upon us without any warning. And right away, you can see how this could be a very frustrating experience. And this isn't limited to just Marathon. Like, imagine walking through all these areas, exploring, having a great time. It's kind of quiet. You're on your guard, but you know you're cool, getting all this cool loot. And then all of a sudden, a team just barrages through and takes you out, and you lose all that cool stuff. And that right there is one part of why extraction shooters are not for everyone. And I think that's a valid thing to avoid if you don't like losing progress in games. And on top of that, not only are enemy players going to be coming after you, but in certain instances, enemy robot AI enemies will land and try to take you out as well. Because the robots are going to come at you a lot more aggressively than enemy players. And when they gang up on you, it's game over pretty quickly. But let's act as though your run went really well and you finally made it to your exfiltration point. You and your team were able to avoid all skirmishes and you won whatever fights you ran into, and now you're on your way out. And at this point, honestly, if you don't get surprised and ambushed by another enemy team, you're gonna exfiltrate just fine, because once you're in the circle and it loads up, it's 10 seconds and you're out of there. And when you escape with all of your loot intact, oh man, that feels so good. Not only do you now have access to all the cool weapons that you found on your run, you also have a lot of of money to spend on things that you can buy in the black market. But one thing I didn't mention that I do think will make Marathon a little more appealing to most players is the missions you can do on your runs. There are a handful of different factions that give you jobs to do while you're on your runs. These are simple things like interact with a terminal or do some damage to some robots while you're out there. And the result of doing these simple tasks, whether you exfiltrate or not, is actual loot that you can rely on at the end of your run. And it also gives you a reason to visit certain areas of the map that you might not have gone to otherwise. So while there is a big chance for you to lose progress if you lose all your loot on a run against enemies or enemy players, there is the opportunity for some persistent growth through the faction missions. And as you collect more items, more credits, and get more experience, you can actually upgrade your skills within each faction. One great example is the ability to unlock a buyable backpack from the store, which will give you more inventory space by default. So rather than hoping you find a coveted backpack while you're on your run, it's much easier just to buy one with the credits that you have. So I'm expecting more upgrades like this to make the growth in the game feel a lot more reliable. And on top of that persistent growth, there's also the Bungie part of this where there's going to be a narrative ongoing through the game. I don't expect it to be very narrative driven, such as in Destiny with the cutscenes and the storylines and the voiceovers. I think this kind of storytelling is going to be a lot more environmental and puzzle solving to try to figure things out as a group. And when I say as a group, Bungie has hinted at the entire community being involved in swaying the story. And to me, this is actually the most exciting part of Marathon, having a community-driven storyline. It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure, but on a scale of thousands of players. And from what I understand, this is going to revolve around artifacts that we can find on our runs or not find. I think one example of this is that we might find an artifact that opens a door to another portal that might lead us to a completely different area. But if that thing is never found, then that story beat never happens. Everything we're talking about here is based on the closed alpha and things that Bungie has said, so it's gonna change, things are gonna evolve over time. But I think the narrative aspect here is a really exciting example of what Marathon could be. In fact, before hyping this game up and leading up to the release date announcement, Bungie ran an augmented reality game. People were online finding different URLs that Bungie hinted at and different things from a live stream to ultimately solve puzzles. Now, I hope the final version of the game doesn't rely on ARGs to be the thing that moves the story forward, but I wouldn't be surprised if they use them again. And I certainly don't have the time to solve an ARG, but it was really exciting to see the community pick these things apart. So after a bunch of great runs where I got a lot of awesome loot and a bunch of horrible runs where I lose my loot almost immediately, I think I'm excited for Bungie's Marathon to come out. I don't know if I'm going to play this game nearly as much as I play Destiny 2, but it will be interesting to see how things progress after launch. Since this is a heavy player versus player experience, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of player base forms around this game, especially since a lot of the players who are going to be trying Marathon in the first few months are people who love Destiny 2, a primarily player versus environment community. Which begs the question, are you going to try Bungie's Marathon when it launches? Let me know in the comments if this is the kind of game you would at least try out, because maybe the new genre to you is something that's a breath of fresh air. Or maybe the highly competitive player versus player environment is just not your vibe at all. If you like this video, make sure you like the video, and if you really like this video and you want to see more of this, then make sure you subscribe to my channel. And thank you for your patience lately as I've been figuring out upload schedules. I've got a lot of cool videos that I'm working on, stuff that I'm really excited for, plus a brand new secret project that I'm not at all going to share just yet, but just know, I think you're gonna love it. But in the meantime, thank you very much for letting me talk your ear off about Bungie's Marathon, and I will see you in the next video.